Thank you very much for your welcoming. I'm very glad to be here. This is my first time also in Vietnam. And as the presenter tells, I'm an economist. I'm here because Michael Salgot is the trainer that has the good information about the workshops that we'll develop next week. And then I can perhaps give you some answers about economics, but not about risk treatment. And maybe you must wait, Michael Salgot, to ask her about these items. Then my presentation is to explain the contents of the workshop number 2, and that it's called Holistic Urban Water Resources Management, then in an urban context. This is the content of the workshop that we'll develop during the week, and my part is the first one that I present this Monday. And the plenary session here, this is the contents, the index, the things I want to expose now. Summary, the economic basis, description of the resources. You will see that this is in a greater Barcelona area. We explain the resources, the structures, the coastal areas, how Barcelona can develop an integrated system to offer safe quality water to the demandants. Metropolitan big cities as Barcelona need to manage the water mix. In the one side, we have the safe water supply, both in terms of quantity and quality, and in the other side, the weight masters in terms of safe disposal of the wastewater, and also the reclamation and reuse. You must know that Barcelona is in a Mediterranean basin, that there is not all the water we want. And then we have to manage the supply in different ways, as I will explain you. All of this system exerts a clear influence on the environmental characteristics of the urban areas, in terms of diversity, climate, economy, as tourism. Tourism is a very important activity, economic activity in the Mediterranean area, health and others. Other types of water we can find there, not only for industry and domestics, are then the management of rainwater, groundwater also, water bodies as river, as sea, the Mediterranean Sea. In the pools also very important, because I told you that it's a tourist region, and the pools that we can find in hotels and second residence are very good, great users of water. That you must think that I told you that the Barcelona has limited supply of water. Then the pools is a little problem also to give to cover this demand. And well, also urban and peri-urban irrigation water, that it's less important than the others. Here's a scheme of what we think it's an urban anthropic water cycle. And this is about the workshops we'll develop this week, are talking about. We can... This one? This? Okay, thank you. We can see the first part is there are different phases. There are numerated phases. Well, this is in Spanish. There is the water abstraction that can be from sea, that can be from wells on the groundwater, from the groundwater, and then also can be from the runoff. These different types of water abstraction is the supply of the water, and they have to receive a treatment, or potabilization, water treatment, and also goes to storage with deposits on swamps. That gives stocking the water. Now we have a lot of water this year. It's really incredible. All the swamps are over 90%. It's a very strange situation in Barcelona. And this water will distribute, well, to the domestics, industries, and all the demandants of this water. After this consumption, the water goes to a sewerage that takes this wastewater, and we go to the depuration, to the treatment of the wastewater. After the depuration, the treatment of the wastewater, we can use this water or for reuse. We talk about quality of this wastewater reuse, or this water goes another time return to the basin to complement the aquifers and the ecological flow of the river. And this is the scheme that we will explain next weeks in the workshops. Okay. Conventional and non-conventional water resources. I told you that I have told you that Barcelona have a lot of kinds of supply water. For example, water from the seawater, there is a desalination installation, or even the wastewater treated, the river transfers, and this is the non-conventional water resources that we developed this week. And all these resources must be employed to guarantee the supply of water in a sustainable and safe way. We are, I tell you again, in a Mediterranean zone that the supply of water is not regularly. Then we need structures to guarantee this supply. And then appears the economic tools that are necessary to define these structures, to evaluate the costs of the investments, and also to cover the management of the water, not only for the supplies, also from the wastewater, with taxes, fees, or the price of the water. I will explain in the workshop 2. Then we think that Barcelona is a very good example as a complex case which combines water from different origins and qualities. these features of the Barcelona metropolitan area will compare in the next days with the features of the countries of the participants. Then, and the main object of the workshops is providing to the participants several non-engineering tools to approach in different ways the urban water cycle. This is the context of our workshops, urban water cycle. Especially considering the non-conventional resources. This is most important for us. The first part of the workshops, this is mine. The economic basis. The economic basis, the economy of the water system is one of the main components of the sustainable management of water. Why? Because if we don't have money, we can do anything about what we are talking before. We can get a lot of plans, but we need financiation to do it. Okay? And the items I will develop next Monday is economy and water economy. We talk about the quality of water as a public good. Eva talked about before the free rider. The water is a impure public good. We explained with more detailed there. And also we analyze the paper of the market of an efficient instrument for the allocation of water resources. Because if it is a public good and we have to use the market, perhaps, I agree with you, perhaps there are little problems. We have to take decision about this, okay? In this sense, we have to take in account the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. I will explain the bottled water as a market, perfect market about with its allocated resources of water through a price, not through taxes and fees and subsidies, no, through a price. But we can see that this market has also negative externalities, as the contamination of plastic bottles, for example, or the overexploitation of the aquifers by the great enterprises. This is a problem, but this is a market. And also, very important for us that as the tourism use the water in two sides. One side is as a resource for consumption, but in the other side, tourism needs the water to as a tourist resort. If the water of the river is dirty, nobody goes to that hotel. You see, then tourists use the water in these ways, and two sides of the resources. Okay. Also, we have to manage all of this economic tools for environmental management. There is one as a cost-benefit data meaning, and we explain all of this. But there is one that is more important for me than the others. That is cost effectiveness. Because why that? Because we can quantify in monetary terms, more or less easily, the cost of all of the treatments, all the structures, but this is not so easy if we want to take a monetary term of the benefits. The benefits, the social benefits are more difficult to give monetary terms to know if the project it's good or not for the social where it's applied. The economy approach should be useful for all kind of water in town. Not only for industry, for example, for all kind of water. And you can see, well, this is surface groundwater, rainstorm, snow, seawater, tap water, wastewater. The economy is everywhere. Economy is everywhere. And then this supply of water and demand of this kind of water should be analyzed from the technical point of view, including the economic one, as I have told you. In this way, the water authority then should decide about which resources must be used in every moment for each purpose, because there is not the same quality water for industry, for domestics, or for parks, for example. And should decide about also the environmental impact of the use of the water on the welfare of the population. Here is an important discussion about the use of the wastewater. Because if we want to use wastewater, we have to get a good quality for use it, okay? And it's important. Then it's a complex decision for the water authority. They have to take account the safety of supply, for example, considering the possibility of drought that we have in the Mediterranean area. 5-8 years ago, it was a very big one that was very difficult for the Barcelona city. And also the safety of quality, considering the domestic one, the drinking water. And other elements are the different kinds of end users. Metropolis, towns users, irrigated agriculture, industries, leisure, tourism. Different kind of quality of water are needed for all of them. And then economic tools for environmental management or decision support system should be able to, first of all, allocate water to the users. We use prices, we use subsidies, we use taxes to get this correct allocate. And also attribute water in function of the quality demanded. These tools are gaining momentum because the elements that have to manage are increasingly complex, as, for example, the climate change. Problem: how to educate these tools with the basic knowledge of the capacities. Because some people don't understand sometimes which actions have to take the water authority. Of water restrictions, for example. In Barcelona, it's impossible. You can have a water restriction. The citizens will be very angry if you do this. Other economic tool of data mining is data mining that is useful to long-term data available and helps to establish relationships between variables that improve that management. External influences in this management. Well, climate change, but also changes in policy, lobbies. All of these will influence in the management of the water. And then this external influence increased the difficulty of reaching decisions acceptable for the majority of the end users, as I have told you. Every decision would not be accepted for the entire society. For example, well, the financing of the wastewater treatment. It depends of the value of the environment for that people. If they prefer a clean environment, they will accept to pay for this. But if this is not, they perhaps think that is very expensive. Then we have to explain which are the functions of the environment, for example, in this case. Finance and fiscal matters, then, can play a role and help people to accept certain inequalities. In European Union, the criteria is that the countries have to adopt the policy of including all the expenses in the final cost of water resources. Include all, this is important, it's an important criteria. Include all the expenses in the final cost of the water resources. This is what I will analyze this Monday through the water bills of the different countries, and we analyze the components of this price, and we will see if there are taxes, fees, and definitely the financing of the supply and wastewater system. This is the we need money. I told you before. And also in the European Union, the implementation of this system in a strict way has also negative consequences to be corrected. For example, large families as mine perhaps need subsidies because the consumption is bigger than the other families. And perhaps we have to give them a subsidy for the characteristics of that family. We talk about also how to finance that subsidies. This is the other side. Okay. Okay. This is my part. I have explained it, and this is the Michael Salgold part. Description of the resources. Water resources in the MAMB is the Area Metropolitana de Barcelona, AMB, see? Then includes not only Barcelona, I'm speaking about Barcelona, but it includes other municipalities, Sant Adrià, Hospitalet de l'Infant, Hospitalet, Santa Coloma, there is other. In total, there are about 4 million people living there. This is a very little one compared with this here, but it's 4 million people living in the AMB. Then AMB present unique characteristics different from the urban agglomerations of the more or less same size, as explained as follow. First one, the AMB is located in the Mediterranean basin. Climatic conditions are very special. The rainfall is concentrated mainly in springtime and fall. And an even yearly pattern of such precipitation. This is very difficult to manage then. There's a climate that is very difficult to manage. The flow of the rivers scarcely depends on the snow. We have the Pyrenees, but the Pyrenees is only with the snow, perhaps they have the snow 2 months a year, 3 months a year. That is not important research for the rivers. And the area is prone to suffer drought, as I told you before, even if there are few dams to regulate flows that are important for us. Another characteristics is the size of the metropolis. There is a high population density, as all the metropolis. So its economy is great part based in tourism and industry. They are big users of water. A tourist in Barcelona has a consumption 4 or 5 times that a citizen of Barcelona. You know, Barcelona is a great the tourism destination, and the water management has to take account of this. Also, part of that resources depends of a polluted river. The Llobregat River is the main supply of water of Barcelona. Then we have to apply a treatment to potabilize the water. On the other hand, we have also the Delta Aquifer in Llobregat that there is over-exploited, and the seawater is has an intrusion and salinization part of that research. And as all the cities, the surface of the area has become mainly impervious for the structures and constructions, and difficults the recharge of the aquifers. As a conclusion, well, the specific characteristics of the A and B imply a structural deficit of supply water, and the economic activity based in tourism, as I have told you, partly is seasonal in summer, especially in summer when the supply is very short. But the seasonality in the main town, Barcelona, has culture tourism every year more, increasingly. And the sol y playa, as we explain, beach and sun tourism is ubicated in the coast, the coastal areas. In summer, as the Mediterranean climate has high summer temperatures, that also implies a high consumer of water. Then we have a very complex management of water supply and water demand, because there are not, when we have a lot of demand, we don't have supply water enough, and we have to use non-conventional resources to get an equilibrium between these two, the demand and the supply. On the other hand, in this area, the water demand for agriculture is relatively low, only on Llobregat River Delta, and there is no farms in this area. Then the main consumers is tourism, industry, and also domestic ones. The origin of the water resources in A and B. Two rivers, Llobregat is the main one, the polluted river. Also, we get water from therein River. Llobregat is located beside Barcelona. It's easy to take the water from the river. But there is 60 kilometers at the north point. We have to take the water, collect the water from that point, and translate it to Barcelona. Also, we can get water from seawater, the salinization plants, and groundwater, mainly the Llobregat River Delta aquifers. Water in Barcelona, in the A and B. points to analyze the water resources in the A and B or Greater Barcelona. First of all, we describe water aspects and characteristics. Second one, describe some tools to deal with sustainability as a general policy, and consider areas which need special management. To manage all of this information, Miquel Salgot has prepared tables that was sent to the trainees, and you will use it in the workshops, in the corresponding workshop. But the information is as follows. Table 1, water resources. Table 2, water outputs. Water 3, water transportation systems. Water 4, water uses. Table 5, water types. And from table 6 to table... Okay. And from table 6 to table 13, we'll include water management plans. A reflection about water resources and climate change. Some of them has explained it this morning in a very interesting I'm sorry, in a very interesting exposition. But, Miquel Salgot will explain also. We have these effects of the climate change. The sea level will rise, seawater intrusion, coastal aquifers, delta areas, as explained it this morning. And the river moves will change their relation with the sea. Also, the climate change has changes in the precipitation models will affect the river flow patterns. Also water safety will be affected. Management of water resources must be undertaken in order to dependence of the climate change. Improve the capacity of the urban areas to better retain the water resources. And recover the natural characteristics of the river basins to improve their relationship with the aquifers. And finally, the aquifer research should be boosted naturally or artificially to guarantee the supply of water. And reclaimed wastewater should be a tool to increase water resources, as we think. Then the water safety plans and sanitation safety plans are the most advanced tools at present to manage this demand of water. A little description of the coastal areas, the Greater Barcelona lies beside the Mediterranean Sea. The seawater is a source for the desalination, and also, most important, the seawater is a sink for treated wastewater and several pollutants. There is another river in Barcelona, that is the Besòs, that is, there is a lot of contamination there. Perhaps 2-3 years ago is a process of treatment to reduce the contamination, but this is not still on the top. Factors to consider about it. The economic development model implies the urban pressures and the environmental degradation of these coastal areas, because I say that is a great the tourist economy is very, very important in this area. Then climate change, impact of the rise of the sea level, and that we should be considerate. Other factors, water hypoxia, changes in the river flows, desviation of the river mouths, retention, habitats, losses, etc. Urban developments also, again, are very important. Coastal flooding, this perhaps is not important in Barcelona. Here, I see this morning that it's very, very important, but in Barcelona, no. But an erosion and change in direction and intensity of the waves affects to the low-lying areas, delta, river mouths of this coastal area. And also fisheries can be affected by the contamination of the seawater near the coast. Then, as a conclusion, the Mediterranean is creating a great harbor, internal movements of people, beach, leisure navigation, other sports, skate, windsurf, everything. Seawater intrusion has to be in account, and the influence of the atmospheric pollution and consequently rainwater quality. Finally, landscape is also important for these coastal areas. Water quality, risk, concepts, and treatments. Water can contain, in the one side, pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasites, and on the other side, chemicals that can be added or natural ones. The added, we can denominate it as pollutants. And these pollutants and that pathogens can cause diseases in the population, as for example, intoxications or cancer. Then the water treatment tries to reduce both pathogens and chemicals to provide water safe for use or treated water. Pollutants might pose a risk to health. The degree of the impact to health could depend on quality of drinking water, quality of the receiving water, that depend the most or less treatment we have to apply, depth of the water table and bottom zone, soil drainage, and the final disposal of treated on and untreated wastewater, even reuse. On the other side, part of these pollutants are regulated under each country laws and county or regional towns regulation. Where the water has not been adequately treated, people can be exposed to pathogens and pollutants through various routes of exposure. First of one, direct contact with the water, including from wells, groundwater. Second one, consumption of unwashed and cooked crops. And third one, soils can accumulate pollutants which can cause problems for crops grown at the later date. The pathogens and the pollutants show very heterogeneous behavior regarding their removal in treatment process. They have difference in retention, depletion, reduction during the soil or aquifer passage. Then it's important to manage this wastewater that a treatment would not equally remove all substances. You have to apply a correct treatment and evaluate the cost of this treatment, because we can get the best water in the world, but what is its cost, you know? environmental and health risk. It differs due to the site-specific characteristics: geology, topography, hydrology, climate zoning, local soil type, irrigation, aquifer vulnerability, method of research. Well, all these characteristics will affect the health risk of the environmental. Then there are a lot of specific characteristics we have to take into account, and then we have to. The risks are very, very, very case specific. It's important to consider all types of risk. Then, not only that the risk that can be quantified or modeled. We must take into account the other ones, almost to take it in account. Still, if we can't quantify it. In this context, it's very important to get a difference, to distinguish the concept of hazard and risk. Hazard, for human health, we consider that can be defined as a biological, chemical, etc., agent that can cause harm to humans with sufficient exposure or dose. Then we have the absolutely certain that it can cause harm to the humans. And risk is the likelihood of identified hazards causing harm and exposed populations in a specified time frame, including the magnitude of that harm or the consequences. So many times we are not, we don't have the, we think that there is no knowledge about hazard, and then we can't evaluate the risk. This is a limitation. And then the overall risk to health depends on the hazardous properties of substance or pathogens in the water that we can be controlled but through the treatment, the degree of exposure of individuals to the water that can be controlled through good practices, for example, crop restriction, delays between fertilization and harvest to allow die-off of remaining pathogens, hygienic food handling and food preparation practices, and the susceptibility of the population, young people, old people, pregnant, to these risks. The water sanitation of safety plans allow taking into account health and environmental risk. They should include these safety plans: the examination of hazards and risk, and release assessments. Decision for risk management should be incorporated into the appropriate plans. And water managers should include water treatment, use and reuse in their decision. Human health and environmental risk associated with water reuse are described in many publications of the World Organization of Health, WHO guidelines. And water reuse is used mainly in agriculture, but it has greater health risks that are associated with crops that are eaten raw or crops that grow close to the soil and can take pollutants. And on the other side, these guidelines take into account emerging pollutants. For example, pharmaceutical, personal care products, household chemicals, food and industrial additives. And there are pollutants that are emerging and can affect the health of the population. in these moments still present in a low concentration, but can impact on a human health. Other item that we can find in these guidelines is about occupational health risk, that the workers that can be exposed to potential contaminants during longer periods, that farmers, workers in the water industry, but nevertheless, these workers are take preventive measures as protective equipment. Other consideration of these guidelines is the risk to soil quality. Irrigation with non-conventional resources has to account the composition of water, especially treated, reclaimed wastewater, and could contain a proportion of heavy metals, boron, micropollutants. Then can affect soil productivity and in a long term, the sustainability of land used for agriculture. Then this treatment should guarantee removal of these chemicals for use this wastewater to the agriculture. And the irrigation with water not adequate for the practice can cause problems as a salt accumulation, salinization in the root zone. Then another time we should guarantee good quality of water for this use. Perhaps it's not necessary that is drinking water, but it has to be a good water for agriculture. And a specific case that we'll develop this next week, is the wastewater reuse. Treated wastewater for reuse and reclaimed water flow is significant compared to the river natural flow, might impact on the river flow levels, which could affect to the river ecology and water availability for the downstream abstraction on the downstream. Okay, then we have to take in account that this wastewater for reuse, take it from the basin and don't come back to the basin. And then we have to take this in account for this, I have told, river ecology and downstream abstraction. On the other side, promoted in this wastewater reuse, promoted in some particular hydrological conditions, such as very dry seasons. And the wastewater treatment plants must discharge in streams with a very limited flow rate, then can contribute to maintaining minimal environmental flow, ecological flow. The impact of the irrigation and reuse schemes on the local hydrological regime should be assessed on a case by case. There's a great complexity of conditionants and characteristics, and then the projects of development have to assess it case by case basis. Then we have to do a water balance that can identify the role of the wastewater at basin level. As I have told you in the slide before, reuse is computed as a reduction in the returned volume to the system. And then we have to compare the decrease in returned volume and the impacts produced by the abstraction from other water resources that we can get. In this way, economic measures must counterbalance that impact. If we use reused wastewater or get the water from the other resources. If we have to do appropriate treatment, the keys of planning and designing of water scheme are to determine the level of treatment and to determine the choice of treatment technology. Design and implementation of an underperforming treatment system could lead to an unacceptable or unreliable water quality for the intended purpose. And then the cost is enormous because we can use this water for nothing. On the other side, we design an implementation of an over-performing treatment system will typically require more energy and chemicals, generate higher carbon for the energy used, emissions, that necessary. This is an excessive cost to get this water. Risk for treatment and choices. There is also a risk about the selection of a treatment process must take into account the level of health risk and the level of environmental risk. And it's important to take into account that advanced treatment could pose a higher risk than the use of water with a lower treatment. Then the treatment can produce other products that has a high risk or treatment also. This risk of subproducts should be assessed also in the planning process. Risk in assessment and management. Risk, as a conclusion, risk assessment and management is a prerequisite for the management of water. This risk management approach can be used as various stages of the anthropic water cycle, considering the development of specific standards of quality of water and the use of this water. A good risk assessment will integrate the specific health and environmental issues to provide a clear, holistic conclusion to guide management decisions. The World Health Organization, finally, published its sanitation system safety planning in 2015. And this planning aims to systematically identify and manage health risk, guide investment based on actual risk to promote health benefits and minimize adverse health impacts, and provide assurance to authorities and the public of the safety of supply sanitation-related products and services. In the water reuse concept, this planning is needed to establish an initial step of priority setting, hazard identification and control to valorize the risk, operational monitoring, and finally, quality control. And that's all. We'll explain. Come on for your attention.